Welcome to the second video of 2.1. Today we're going to continue talking about number lines and coordinate grids. Just a reminder of our learning objectives for this section. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is we're going to add two or more integers using absolute value. Okay, so using a number line is one way to add integers, so now we're going to look at another way. Okay, another way to do that involves using absolute values. So now remember, an absolute value is the distance or the number of units that the number is from 0, so it's always a positive number. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to see this symbol right here, those two vertical lines, with an integer in the middle when the absolute value is being used. Okay, so here are how we're going to use the absolute value strategy to add integers. Okay, so we're going to add two integers with the same sign, so if they're both positive or both negative, we're going to add their absolute values and then give the answer the same sign as the two original ones. So if they were both positive, we would add the absolute values and then our answer would be positive. If they were both negative, we would add their absolute values and then the answer would be negative. Step 2, to add integers with different signs, so now if one's positive and one's negative, we're going to take the smaller absolute value. So if we take the absolute value of both numbers, the smaller one we're going to subtract from the bigger one. It doesn't matter what order it's in, it's always smaller minus bigger. Bigger minus smaller. Then we're going to give the answer the same sign as the bigger absolute value. So if the bigger absolute value had a negative, then our answer would be negative. If the bigger absolute value was positive, our answer would be positive. Okay, so we're going to use that to find the sum of negative 13 and negative 12. Okay, so these are the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the absolute value of both. So the absolute value of 13 is 13. The absolute value of negative 12 is 12. Then I'm going to add those together, and I'm going to get 25. Okay, now remember, our final answer is going to have the same sign as our original two numbers. The original were both negative, so my answer will be negative. When I add them together, I get a negative 25. Now they're opposite, so now 13 is positive and 12 is negative. So I'm still going to find the absolute value of both. So absolute value of 13 is 13. Absolute value of negative 12 is 12. But now I'm going to take bigger minus smaller. So 13 minus 12 gives me 1. Okay? So then the sign of 1 is going to be the sign of the bigger number in the original problem. 13 is bigger than 12, so I'm going to use 13, and 13 is positive, so my answer would be 1. Okay, so now there's three numbers that we're going to do. So now we kind of have to break it up. It doesn't matter which two that you add together first, you just have to pick two. So I'm going to add 7 and 2 first. So I'm going to take the absolute value of 7, absolute value of 2, and I get 7 and 2. Add them together because they both have the same sign. It's positive 7, positive 2. And I get 9. Okay? And then that 9 keeps the same sign as 7 and 2, and that was positive. So now I'm at 9 plus a negative 10. Now they're different signs, so you see how 9 is positive, 10 is negative. So I take the absolute value of both. Okay, so I get absolute value of 9 is 9, absolute value of negative 10 is 10. And then I'm going to subtract the smaller from the bigger. So 10 minus 9 gives me 1. So now this 1 is going to have the same sign as the larger of the absolute value. So negative 10 had the larger absolute value. It was a negative, so my answer is going to be negative 1. So here are a few examples I want you to try on your own. So go ahead and pause the video, solve all three of these, and then hit play and see how you did. Okay, so for the first one, I combined negative 4 plus 7 first. So I took the absolute value of both and got 4 and 7. Now the signs are opposite, so one's positive, one's negative, so I have to subtract the smaller one for the bigger one. So I did 7 minus 4 equals 3. And then I kept 3 positive because the larger absolute value started out as a positive number. So then I'm left with 3 plus a negative 5. So again, absolute value of both of those, I get 3 and 5. Again, since they're different, one's positive, one's negative, I subtract the smaller from the bigger, so I've got 5 minus 3 and I get 2. But this time that 2 becomes negative because the larger absolute value, or the 5, started out as a negative number. So my answer is -2. For the second one, I started out by adding -9 and -12 together. Finding the absolute value of both, I get 9 and 12. Okay? Since they're the same side, I add those together and I get 21. And 21 is negative because both of the original numbers were negative. So now I've got -21 plus 8. Absolute value of both again, I get 21 and 8. Since they're different signs, one's positive, one's negative, I subtract 21 minus 8, and I get 13. 13 becomes negative because the larger number 21 started out as a negative number. For the last one, I combine -12 plus 29 first. Absolute value of both is 12 and 29. Since they're different signs to start out with, one positive, one negative, I subtract 29 minus 12 and I get 17. 17 stays positive because the larger absolute value started off as a positive number. So I've got 17 plus a -18. Absolute value of both, 17 and 18. Since they're different again, one's positive, one's negative, I take 18 minus 17 and get 1. And my 1 is a -1 because the larger absolute value started off as a negative. Now we're going to find the difference of integers using a number line. Okay, so we can subtract integers by using a certain strategy. Using this strategy will allow us to find the difference between integers. Remember that the word difference is the key word, and that means we're going to be subtracting. Now subtracting kind of has the opposite effect that adding did. So when we subtract a positive number, the person's going to move backwards because it's just like adding a negative. When we subtract a negative number, they're going to move forward. So it's going to be like adding a positive. Okay, so when we've got a number line to find the difference of 4 minus 3. So if I get my number line here, we always start at 0. Okay. Now we start off with a positive 4. Positive means we go to the right 4 spots. So now we're here. And when we subtract a positive 3, we actually move left 3. And we get to here, giving us our final answer right here at 1. So now instead of subtracting a positive 3, we're going to do subtracting a -3. And so again, always start with 0. Now we start with a positive 4, so we're going to move to the right 4. And we get here at 4. Now when we subtract a -3, we're going to go forward again, 3. So basically, this equation right here is the same as doing 4 plus 3. The negatives cancel each other out. And when we do that, we arrive at our final answer of 7. Okay, so now we're going to do -4 minus 3. Okay, so again, just like we always do, start at 0 on our number line right here. So now when we've got a -4, we go to the left 4. And we start it, and we go right here. Okay, and then when we minus 3, we're still going to the left 3. So then we end up here, giving us our final answer of -7. Now we're going to subtract a -3 from -4. Okay. Just like always, we start at 0. -4 means we go left 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we get to here. Okay. And then when we subtract a negative, again, that's just like doing -4 plus 3. So we would be going to the right 3. So 1, 2, 3, we'd end up right here at -1. So for these next 3 here, I want you to do these on your own. I've given you the number line already, so you can use that. Go ahead and pause the video, get the answers that we're looking for, and then hit play and see how you did. So for the first one, starting at 0, we should have gone left 5 first for that -5, and then left another 2 for the -2, ending up with -7. For the second one, starting at 0, we want to go to the right 7 to start because it's a +7. And then since we're subtracting a -2, it's just like adding 2, so we're going to go right 2 again and get to 9. For the last one, starting at 0, we want to go left 9 because the first number is a -9, and then subtracting a -5 is just like adding 5, so we're going to go back to the right 5, ending us at -4.